Greetings, Offworlders, and welcome back to Offworld Off Topic. I'm Mark Fox Powell, and the guy in the other box is Sam
Hello.
Taylor.
Hello, everyone.
So, welcome back to Offworld Off Topic. This is that's my phone going.
Ignore it. Yeah, things are looking a bit different around here.
Things are looking a bit different around here. We're obviously not in the same little room that we used to be in. This is kind of like an intermediate format, I'd say. We're not quite in season 2 territory yet. Season 2, if we're going to call it that. But yeah, so this is kind of what might end up happening will look maybe a bit similar to this, but we're going to have a play around and see what we can do. But for now, this is what we're bringing for you.
Yeah. We'll probably get. I mean, I imagine this Hangouts thing. We're using Google Hangouts at the moment. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with it. I'm surprised you can get this sort of software for free, really.
Yeah, it seems to do a lot of stuff, that we were thinking we would have to kind of mess around with and try and find various platforms to be able to do a lot of the things we want to do. But actually, Google Hangout seems to kind of do it all just seamlessly for free, and then record it directly to YouTube. So,
yeah,
kind
exactly.
of amazed by that.
Yeah. So it will maybe be using Hangouts still, but we'll probably get some better quality webcams. The internet quality should be a bit better. This sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it should look a bit tidier. One thing to note is that using this new format, we will, as we've had some requests from people, to show more images during shows.
Yeah.
And we can now do that quite easily with this without having to do a load of editing on the back end. So we will be including that more in the show from now on, hopefully.
Yeah, which is cool because what we're talking about today, it's definitely nice to have some good visual aids.
Yes, yeah. And some fucking cool visual aids at that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my god. Yeah, they're all renders mostly, but fuck me. Anyway, so it's worth saying what we're actually going to be talking about. So this isn't really a return to our weekly shows yet. We're still kind of in the midst of our sort of hiatus between season 1. I stopped calling it that.
You're about to go away. I'm about to go away just after that again. So we're just not going to be here to do these sorts of shows on a regular basis anyway. But we will be returning to more regular content. There will be some other stuff popping up in the next few months, but it won't be weekly as you've come to sort of expect.
Yeah, our much teased special content is in the pipeline as well. So
that should be
your
out.
eyes open for that. But so we just had to get together and talk about this because obviously a couple of weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, whenever, end of September, Elon Musk did his big unveiling of the SpaceX Mars colonial architecture for traveling to Mars, taking hundreds of people to Mars, all that stuff. And we've been looking forward to that for ages, as have so many other people, obviously. So
yeah, forever.
We need to talk about it.
Yeah, I did a short React video on my own while you were away.
Yeah, I was in Turkey.
You're in Turkey. And so we've given some of my kind of initial thoughts, but we're going to go into more detail during this, not just on the architecture. We're going to do a bit on what the architecture contained and kind of what it was. Not going to do a huge amount on that because obviously they've just done a 2-hour-long talk on it.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a long, like, kind of fact checking, just repeating what they've said, sort of show. Hopefully, it will just be more us kind of talking about, the impacts of this potentially on the space industry, and just some kind of covering some stuff that they didn't talk about, speculating on what's coming next, speculating on various things, what it's going to be like, etc. So
yeah, and who's going to get to go, and when is it actually going to happen, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So firstly, quick shout out to Blue Origin.
Yep.
My boy Jeff Bezos, smashing it.
Absolutely smashed it. We both watched it live, and it was pretty cool. They did a in-flight abort test of their crew capsule on the New Shepard rocket, and man, it was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah.
So I'm loving this like new space. What's called new space now. So this new space thing of the really like high quality live streams of all the launches.
Oh yeah, it's fucking awesome.
There's definitely like a sort of neck and neck race going on with SpaceX and Blue Origin because their live stream was like badass. It was really good.
Yeah. Really good. It was great. So they what did they do? They basically tried the abort test for their capsule.
Yeah.
which has like a little solid rocket booster that means it can escape if something's going wrong with the rocket. But not only did they manage to achieve that and land the capsule safely, but they also were able to recover the rocket totally. The rocket just flew into space as normal. Mark is putting an image up now of it.
So yeah, this is the abort test of the crew capsule, and you can see actually in the lower. I don't know if you can see the mouse at all. Can you see the mouse there?
I can see the mouse, yeah. So they should be able to see that.
But you can see the booster still there, but the actual crew capsule is being fired away, and that was like 45 seconds after launch. But man, the actual just the way that crew capsule was like flipping through the air after it launched looked pretty intense.
Yeah, that would be you'd be fine, you would survive, but you'd be pretty shaken up, I imagine, if you can hear the rocket like exploding beneath you, and then this thing fires off and chucks a bunch of tourists who have no astronaut, have like a day of astronaut training into some sort of crazy kind of arcing dive that then is recovered with parachutes. So it'd be pretty crazy, I imagine, to experience. But the cool thing was they didn't design the New Shepard to take this fire off. Basically, they thought it might blow up or whatever.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it wasn't designed at all to deal with this. It was, basically it was all designed so the crew capsule gets away safely and, sod the booster. But the way they've designed it, it seems to be able to take it, and they landed the booster totally fine. They're not going to be reusing the booster.
Yeah.
So this one, it's good in the sense that this now we can actually just stick this thing in a museum. I mean, or Blue Origin will display it in some way, and that's cool because this is like the first rocket basically to go into space that vertically landed. I think it's got that record. I don't think there was anything else before it.
No, I think it is absolutely, and they've got like I think did you say it was the 5th flight of this booster?
It is. I don't think I said that.
Yeah, so it's the 5th flight of this booster. So I mean, the first ever rocket to go into space and land and then do the same thing 5 times is pretty awesome. So that's the museum piece for show.
Yeah, it's great that they've got it back because it would be kind of upsetting if they blew it up, on that last flight.
Yeah. I have to say though, watching that crew capsule descend, there was a long time. So the drogue parachutes came out, and there was a long time after that before the main ones opened. I was like, is it just going to hit the ground in a minute? Like, that would have been a bit of a fail. But
I was thinking that because it seemed like the commentators were sort of. I mean, I guess it all went to plan, but it did seem like when they were talking, they were sort of like it should deploy soon, and then like they just didn't for a while. I did wonder if it deployed slightly later than they expected, or they just weren't quite in the loop as to when it was going to deploy. But it looked like everything went perfectly fine. It seemed to land fine.
Watching that thing land is just a beaut as well because it like hovers a little bit before it lands.
Oh yeah, the booster. Yeah.
And it's just such a soft landing.
If you look at the bottom of the booster before they launched it, you can see they've had to kind of like repair it slightly from the previous stuff. So they've kind of redone the bottom around where the engine is seems to have had some sort of like I don't know, epoxy or something put on it, or some sort of repainted it or something like that. Oh, is that it breaking off?
Yeah. So I just found this image. It's a very cool looking image. That's unfortunately as large as it will go.
That's all right. It's all right.
That's the instant that the crew capsule starts its abort. So you can see like the solid rocket boosters and the crew capsule are just firing. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's cool. It would be interesting to see how much. I mean, we don't have much detail on how extensive the repairs have to be for this thing once they've reused it. And I imagine the SpaceX repairs will be more extensive in the sense that it's basically gone through more shit. So we'll find out kind of how that goes when they redo the booster. SpaceX do later this year. I think, is it later this year or next year they're planning to do that? I think it's changed, hasn't it, slightly because they blew up that rocket.
Yeah, I think originally it was later this year. I think is it the next launch? No, it's not the next launch, but it was coming up. I think it was going to be this year, but who knows at this point. I'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see how much these types of things have how much work has to be done on them and how long they sort of last. That will become apparent.
It's a very different ball game with what SpaceX are doing because the rockets go through so much more like loading, G loading and heat, mainly heat. That's the main thing. So yeah, so that's a whole different thing, but it's still really, really cool to see Blue Origin. I'm just loving that you're having all these companies that are like these new kind of space companies that are just doing really like innovative stuff, and
Yeah,
it's just
it's
awesome.
fucking awesome.
I can't wait to climb onto one of those new Shepard rockets and see space. It's gonna be fucking cool.
Yeah, it will. Oh, quick thing as well. There's been some before we start the ITS stuff. It's probably worth talking about because it's funny. This whole talk about the SpaceX rocket that blew up being sabotaged.
Oh yeah.
That's hilarious. They, like, SpaceX demanded to go look on the roof of the ULA building that's kind of within sight of the rocket launch pad.
Yeah.
That's hilarious that they have to go. Like, imagine they just, like, ULA hired a sniper to just take it out. Surely
Yeah.
not, but
I mean,
it's still hilarious.
yeah, I think I was reading on Reddit, someone had calculated all the distances involved between the ULA building and the rocket, and then like how fast, say like a 50 cal rifle projectile would fire, and how fast the sound of that would travel. So it calculated all the distances and the sound, and actually there's like a slightly quieter bang on the video of that explosion just before the main explosion, and
Right.
and it's really similar from his calculations. You know, the time that you would hear the rifle going, and then the time that sound happens on the video is like really close, like spookily close.
Yeah, because there was a bang, wasn't there, before the thing exploded, and that's what Elon was saying I think he said it on his Twitter, didn't he? He said something like, "Oh, especially there's a bang before the basically you see an explosion or you see the flame ignite on the rocket," and he wanted to know what that was. And it obviously could be some, like, it rupturing before it ignites or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's obviously something they're not sure about. It's obviously it's either a very complex failure, but it does seem slightly out of the ordinary whatever's happened.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying that it's like the most complex failure they've ever had, and
Yeah.
it's all down to like a breach in the helium pressurization system, I believe, something like that. That they can't explain why the breach happened. So, you know, a rifle projectile would explain the breach. But the thing is, like, if they were really obvious, I mean, obviously it's just media speculation. But if they were really like actually suspicious of ULA or something, the FBI wouldn't be involved. It would be like a criminal investigation.
They went round there, didn't they? Instead of SpaceX, they were denied access. Some sort of army thing was allowed access to the roof, and I think the report was they didn't find anything suspicious. But the snipers get out of there quick, mate.
Man, that would be absolutely crazy if that turned out to be the actual.
Or just if there was a sabotage of any kind. I mean, not necessarily ULA, but you know, whoever. That does. I mean, it seems fucking stupid if a company like ULA did that.
That would be the end.
What a ridiculous risk! Surely they just wouldn't do that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. There's no way that would happen.
Surely there's no way.
It's just highly banterous to think about, though.
Yeah. We'll see how that progresses. And we'll definitely, if it does turn out to be something absolutely insane, we'll obviously do a video about it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get some more deets about that fairly soon.
Yes. Okay. Right. Let's talk about the ITS then.
Yes.
The Interplanetary Transport System, not called the Mars Colonial Transporter anymore.
No, I like the broadening of the name.
Yeah, that very deliberate broadening. It looked, they're obviously planning that they've expanded the kind of outlook of not the capabilities. They've designed this thing and just kind of broadened the scope of it, really.
Yeah, because they basically realized they can do loads more. Yeah.
Yeah. On the subject of that explosion, doesn't look like it had any impact on the announcement. We did talk about in our episode.
Well, when we were talking about the explosion,
we did a video on the explosion itself, and it looks like. I mean, you think he may have mentioned it once in the talk, but to me, that talk was absolutely no different from what they had planned before the explosion.
Yeah, I can't see how it could have changed. I mean, it was essentially just him unveiling these plans with no, like, not even really a nod to the incident. But so that's fair. I think I'd speculated that it would actually they'd cancel it, but which obviously looking back.
Well, people were talking about that.
Yeah, sure.
But they just thought, screw it.
Yeah. So on screen right now is this is like one of the renders that they made a little video, and it's either in the video or it's just a separate render. But this is the Interplanetary Transport System, sort of in full on the ground, so you can see it.
Ready
This is
to
Cape
go.
Canaveral or wherever. Maybe they launched that in Texas or something. But there it is.
That's definitely
sitting
Cape
there.
Canaveral.
Yeah, sure.
That
Yeah,
render.
yeah. I guess it must be. But that's basically the whole thing you see right there. So you've got the fucking massive booster in the first stage.
Well, the whole thing's massive. I mean, look at the size of the spaceship that's detached from it. Move
Yeah,
the mouse to it. Like
this,
that's bloody massive. I'd like to
this
see a like a Falcon 9 stacked up next to that, see how tall just the spaceship part is, because I reckon
yeah.
it's not, it's a good way similar. I don't know how tall it was exactly. There probably are those numbers out there, and maybe we can have a look in a bit. But yeah, I imagine it's not that dissimilar in height to a Falcon 9. It's probably shorter, but
yeah, it's a bit shorter. The actual spaceship's a bit shorter than a Falcon 9, but not a huge amount. And this thing is the whole system, when it's stacked up, the whole rocket is like a bit taller than a Saturn V and far, far wider. It's just a giant fucking machine.
It's chode, man.
It's absolutely massive.
Yeah, and that crane thing next to it's pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
For reloading seemingly the spaceship back on, when the booster lands, it refills and they stick another spaceship on it.
Yeah, so
I think it'll be a while before they're, doing recycling the launch vehicle that quickly.
yeah, I mean
that
that
be long periods of time of very detailed engineering, checking over, rebuilding parts of it, or whatever.
The idea of being able to do that, though, so the idea was to be able to land the booster, so to fire off the crew capsule into orbit, low Earth orbit, land the booster on the launch pad, and then immediately stack in the fuel tanker and launch it again, presumably with just enough time to refuel it, and then that's it. I mean, the thought of that, we're a long way off that in terms of rocketry in the moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's like that. The speed of that turnaround's almost like, get everyone off Earth type thing, like evacuate the Earth. Just like chucking these things out really fast.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. So this is the actual kind of. Is it the full cycle? Yeah, they've got Mars and Earth on there. Yeah. So this is the cycle of the transport system, essentially.
Yeah. Right. So what happens basically is this massive ship that we were just talking about, this massive rocket, launches the crew capsule, which is like the upper stage part, basically, into low Earth orbit.
Yeah, it's a bit more than a capsule, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say a crew capsule.
Like some giant sort of spaceship.
Yeah, it's like spaceship is sort of the best word to describe it. Really, it's like a ship that is in space. Yeah. But so that sits in low Earth orbit. Probably most of the fuel being spent just by the actual like getting into orbit part, and then the main booster gets back to land on the launch pad, like we just said, and gets refuel. It has like a fuel tanker, which is the same size and shape as the crew compartment, shoved on the top. Then that launches, and after a few of these, you sort of start to refuel the orbital crew capsule, crew compartment, crew ship, and basically you wait and then until the orbital alignments between Earth and Mars.
Isn't the it's not the same booster that takes up the fuel tank, right? Is the fuel tanks like in a separate pad somewhere else or something? Is that right? I don't know, because on that image, look on that image, it says series of tankers to refuel ship, and it looks like
different rockets.
It launches the ship, and then that fuel tanker's like either already there or meets it up there. If you see what I mean.
That's a good point.
Looking at the image.
Yeah, in that video, like that little rendery video, which, I mean, who knows how accurate that thing is meant to be. I know he said that like, the ship and stuff, the hardware is essentially what they're going to build, but the actual like what actually happens, so like there has a little crane that lifts the fuel tanker up and puts it on top of the booster, so that might not happen. You might have like a bunch of these things ready to go, some with fuel tankers on top and then one with the actual cruise ship on top.
Yeah, for some reason I got the impression in that little video, is it a fuel tank that it puts back on top of it or just another spaceship?
That's a fuel tank.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a fuel tank.
Okay.
Yeah, so the idea, well, however that works, I'm not really sure how that's going to work.
No.
But however that works, you end up with a fully fueled spaceship, this upper stage part, in orbit, ready to go. And then like when you get the orbital alignments between Earth and Mars, which is like every 26 months, then it boosts itself on a Mars trajectory and gets to Mars. It takes like 80 days or possibly up to sort of 100 days or something like that if it's
that sounds right.
Yeah.
A fairly long time.
Yeah, it's pretty long. I mean, these things are massive, and we'll talk about this in a sec, what it'll be like to be on one. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's a long time to be in a contained space with loads of
Yeah,
other people.
sure, sure. And then it lands right propulsively on Mars and
Yeah,
refuels.
lands propulsively on Mars, which is insane. Like this thing is fucking huge.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about the re-entry, or the entry, I suppose, into the Mars atmosphere, and the heat shield, the size of the heat shield, and all that sort of thing that's required to kind of get this thing through the atmosphere of both Earth and Mars. But that's a huge object landing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sort of aero brakes, doesn't it? So it like presents its like biggest side to the atmosphere
Yeah.
and just fucking plows through it like a beast.
Yeah,
And then
it's 450 tons, that thing,
yeah,
that
yeah,
they aim to land on Mars, right? Just
yeah.
for, I mean, we were expecting what, 100 tons,
That's what he originally said. I'm sure that was the original thing, 100 tons of payload on Mars, but
and
450.
even 100 tons is like crazy, crazy, crazy high. I mean, what was the Red Dragon, like 1.3 tons or
1.3,
something like that?
which is already like pretty massive compared to what's been launched. Like Curiosity was in total like including wait, was it 2 tons Curiosity?
No, I can't remember.
Is it
It was
1 ton? It's
less.
possibly 1 ton actually.
I thought it was less. I thought Curiosity, the Sky Crane thing, could deliver. I thought it could deliver like significantly more, this Red Dragon thing, than the Curiosity Sky Crane system.
Yeah, you're possibly right. I might be thinking of the weight of the Sky Crane plus the rover.
Yeah.
But obviously the Sky Crane doesn't actually land, so
No, it just sort of
well,
crashes.
it does, just hard. Yeah, yeah. So this thing lands propulsively, which is again just awesome. I mean, SpaceX are pulling off this propulsive landing stuff, a bit like Blue Origin, obviously. Once that's nailed down and it's precise, then you can just land anywhere you want. You know, anywhere in the solar system, this thing will be able to land.
Yeah, it
Presumably.
might be landing at what. I mean, they need it to land in quite a specific place, I imagine, because it's
Yeah,
going to have to be close to whatever habitat they have built. If it lands, 50 miles off target, that could be a bit of a pain in the ass.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's something really like just sci-fi about it, you know, just the idea of this like giant sort of rocket thing. It looks really cool as well, like coming down to land. It
For
looks
sure,
fucking cool.
for sure.
Anyway, so that sits on Mars, and um, then
They refuel it with the
refuels.
stuff there.
Yeah, and this is the sort of the idea that that is quite innovative about this rocket is that using the methane and liquid oxygen fuel system, that's all they use. That's the only like fuel fluids they use. Both of them can be manufactured pretty easily on Mars from the atmosphere. And I think he was saying in this in the thing that yeah, like a lot of other rockets use like ignition fluids and to like ignite the boosters, and they use like pressure and so helium and stuff to pressurize the tanks as they get drained, and like cold gas thrusters and stuff, which are again another like fluid component. Whereas this is literally just going to be all of those tasks going to be done by the liquid oxygen and the methane. So that really cuts down your complexity of fuels and stuff for Mars.
Yeah,
It
it means
means
you could get all of it on Mars.
yeah, but it also means that it's probably a bit more of an engineering challenge because you're going to have to be having to
Yeah.
pressurize the tanks with like gaseous propellant essentially as they start to drain. Like Christ knows how that's going to work. But anyway, that's for the fucking rocket scientists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
And then
I
it
think that's a
basically,
pretty
yeah, then it takes off from Mars, doesn't it? Heads back. It doesn't have a booster or anything on Mars. It just refuels straight into orbit,
doesn't have a
straight
hench
out.
gravity well to get out of like it does on
Not as
Earth.
big. No, and less atmosphere as well.
Yeah. So
And then it's on its way back.
then it's on its way back, and I guess if you want to come, people want to come home, then you just jump on board for the return.
Yeah, they said the cost of it, you'll basically be paying for like a return for free, if you like.
Hmm.
You pay to get out there and you return for free, or whatever way they end up sort of cost structuring it.
Yeah.
But that's the general idea, which is nice because you're not going to persuade many people to go to Mars if they can never come back for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's always talking about getting an overlap between number of people who want to go to Mars and number of people who can afford to go to Mars, and that number of people who want to go to Mars is going to be pretty small if you can't come back.
Yes.
There's something about that, just like psychological, just the ability to come home, even if most people probably won't. That will, that will get them going, get them there. It's probably worth saying. I mean, we covered this extensively in our episode about like should we colonize other planets, and we focused mainly on Mars. But it's worth saying that the actual reason for this is the reason SpaceX exists. Is this thing?
Yeah.
This is what they started. This is what they started out specifically to do this, to make humans a multiplanetary species. And just the concept of having a company that exists with that as its goal. And now they've put out the technology, they've announced the technology they're going to use to do that, to make that a reality with a timeline of like 10 years from now. I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute, but so that's just mind blowing. I just can't get over.
Yeah, I think Elon said during the talk that his like whole point now is just going to be using all his assets to get this done. Like, there's quite a high chance it will fail, obviously, but he was just gonna, that's what he's working towards. That's his thing. That's his goal.
Yeah. So he said, "I've got no other need for personal assets other than this."
Yeah, exactly.
Pilot
That's cool. Okay, let's talk about the rocket then.
Yeah.
The booster. Let's start with the booster.
What a beast.
What a beast. 42 Raptor engines. A lot of Raptor engines.
Yes.
They've already tested out the Raptor engines. Have you got a picture of the Raptor engines firing? I think there's been some pictures released. Or the booster itself. Yeah, sure. As I said in the one of the reaction video, and they said in the talk, it looks like there's kind of a ring of boosters that don't gimbal, and in the center there's like a core of Raptor boosters of engines that gimbal around and allow it to maintain stability and things. The idea of the booster being that it's again totally reusable in the same way that the Falcon 9 is, and the ITS spaceship is as well. The entire thing is reusable. So that's a big booster to land. That's a big ass thing that's going to be landing back on Earth. No doubt it'll be horrendously loud and just crazy awesome.
And just look insane. I just can't get over, like the way it's going to look is going to be nuts. Seeing that thing coming. I mean, watching the like the Falcon 9 first stage landings are already, crazy, insane. Yeah. So seeing this thing screaming back down through the atmosphere, man, I can't. Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
And the launch of it as well. Just think of the launch. Like, how loud is that thing going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be a beast.
Okay, here's a picture.
The Raptor test. So this is just a single Raptor engine, and I love the blue color of the methane.
Yeah.
It burns with this kind of blue flame, which they've obviously put in all the renders of the thing launching as well. Just like bright blue column of fire coming out the bottom. It's what
you can't see the shot cones in that quite, but yeah.
No, you can't. No,
I'm shocked about the size of it, like how small it is.
Yeah. Oh, there's another one. Look. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
It's the same size as the Merlin, but has 3 times the thrust.
Yeah.
It's a hench engine. Again, like it's just another. This is the next generation of rockets. That it really is very different to anything that we've seen before.
Yeah, I don't know what the efficiency and if this type of engine, the use case for it is restricted to this ITS vehicle, or whether they think they might replace the Falcon 9 engines with it at some point, or
there has been some chat about replacing making like a Methalox upper stage for the Falcon 9.
Right, yeah, because I think there are like the efficiency of the engine, or there's various other things that balance out slightly differently with the Falcon 9's current engine, the Merlin.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I don't think it's one of these. It's better totally across the board. I think there are some trade-offs, but
yeah. And if I try and find a
that massive fuel tank. Go back to that a second.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, this is also worth mentioning then as well. This was another huge surprise from the presentation, as well as the Raptor test, which actually wasn't that much of a surprise. We had heard something about that before, that had happened a few days beforehand. But this thing is one of the carbon fiber. It's a liquid oxygen tank from the spaceship, like the crew spaceship, and like that gives you an idea. That's the diameter of the rocket. The
Yeah,
whole
I mean,
rocket's going to be that diameter.
well, it would be wider than that, wouldn't it? That would be inside it.
Well, only slightly wider. So
Yeah,
this
only
is another
slightly
thing
wider.
about the rocket is that the fuel tanks are sort of integrated into the structure of the rocket, which is again like a massively innovative thing. It's like a totally new approach. Like normally you have these things, the fuel tanks are like hanging off the inside of the skin of the rocket essentially.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not sure. Again, I don't know exactly how this is going to work, obviously, but it seemed to be from his talk that almost like the outside of that fuel tank is going to be the outside of the rocket, at least close enough to anyway.
Right. Okay. So that's actually that will support the structure of the rocket as well as.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, but I don't understand how you stop things like boil off of your fuels and stuff if you on the whole way to Mars. Like, how are you gonna?
They said they needed some work on that, didn't they, or something like that, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know how good carbon fiber is, particularly at sort of trapping, the permeability of it, I suppose, to these types of fuels over long periods of time.
Yeah.
It's obviously a very strong and light material, but I imagine there's going to have to be some work done on ensuring that it is very low permeability material they use.
Yeah. So this, just to give you an idea, there's two guys obviously stood next to it, looking up at it, and yeah, I mean, the actual crew compartment will be on top of that. I'll just grab a diagram of the interior of the spaceship so you get an idea of where that tank sits.
Yeah. So that's essentially the width of that tank is also going to be the kind of, I suppose it's sort of a cone shape, but the width of the crew compartment is going to be essentially kind of the back of it will be the same sort of width as that. So you get a kind of idea of the size we'll look at when we look at this diagram that Mark's just finding at the moment. But it's a big thing. I mean, that's a big space, but with 100 people in it for 3 months, I mean, it's not huge. It is huge, but it's not. It'll be interesting because he did also mention about taking, say, 200 people at some point or whatever.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine how that is going to work. So I'll just show you this thing now. Yeah, so this is the diagram, and so this can you see my mouse here? You can see
I
this.
can see it.
This is that fuel tank that we just saw. This section here.
Fucking hell, it's massive, isn't it?
Absolutely massive. It's just unbelievable that this is just the spaceship. So this is just the upper stage part of the rocket.
I know.
A person was, not much bigger than the little like icon of my mouse.
A smaller, I think.
Yeah. So anyway, so this section above that, you've got a cargo bay there, and then above that is the inhabited, like pressurized habitat essentially for the trip. So 100 people in that. I mean, it's big, but it's not that big.
No, it will be.
It's actually not much bigger than the fuel tank itself if you look at it.
No, I think it's probably smaller in volume. Well, or maybe somewhat similar anyway. Yeah. So exactly. I mean, we don't have much detail on what's going into that top habitat bit.
No, hardly.
Yeah, they're going to have to be very ergonomic with the way they space things out.
They gave us like a little fly-through video, which I was like, ooh, because I'm immediately with these kind of things, I'm already thinking like, what's it going to be like when I go on it? So, I saw the fly-through and I was like, I sat forward a bit, like, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to imagine what it's going to be like. But it was obviously, there's not much, they didn't really give much away, presumably because they haven't really thought that much about the interior design of the habitat section.
No, I suppose that's a fair way off.
Yeah, that's almost, I mean, it's non-trivial because it's going to be make or break for the psychological well-being of the people, but at the same time, it's better to just get the rocket sorted first.
Sure, yeah. I think that I just like the size of that window at the front as well.
A lot of people are wondering if that's removed from the design.
I was going to say, is that really going to be there? It doesn't seem. It seems too big a weak point.
I agree,
and it's
but
probably going to be pretty heavy.
it's very cool. And I don't know if they can. It's very heavy, yeah. But if they can get it working, like if that is a thing that they can do,
Yeah, I mean, again,
it's
like
gonna
we're
be
talking about the psychological well-being of the crew. That's really important. And he did say during the talk that this was supposed to be something that's pleasurable. It's not kind of astronauts in the traditional sense where it's you have to be hardened, kind of crazy, slightly crazy people to go on these things and spend a long period of time crammed into a little box with not a huge amount of stimulus, I suppose, to keep you occupied. Or he said there's going to be like restaurants in it and things. Almost the way he sold it almost made it sound like it's going to be some sort of cruise ship, like a
yeah,
luxury cruise ship.
yeah. Which I am a little bit kind of skeptical of. I don't think it's going to
Yeah,
be that cushy. I think there'll be aspects of it that make it a lot better than it could be, or it even could have been like now, or even 10 years ago. Like a VR, for example, is going to make
yeah,
it a lot better. People are going to be able to sort of escape the reality of where they are for a bit, and the fact that you're focusing on what you're doing. You're going to Mars. It's not that long. 2 to 3 months. It's just on the cusp of. I mean, it's going to be tough, but it's doable.
yeah.
Um,
I think you're right. I think it's doable and stuff, but it's more the fact that you're not necessarily. I don't know how they're going to vet the crews and things. Maybe we'll talk about this later, but who they people are paying to do this. It's there's no selection. There's no whatever.
yeah, I actually
And
don't think
people
there
aren't
will
going
be
to
a
have put.
vetting. Yeah.
You think there will be vetting?
Not like maybe the first few flights there'll be sort of astronauts, like proper
Yeah.
astronauts, but
Oh yeah.
eventually they're just going to be paying customers, and they're just going to be whoever wants to go gets to go, basically.
Yes, and then when you're doing 3 months in a confined space, I mean, if people are, it should be fine, but without vetting people properly, you don't know what kinds of personalities you're going to be inadvertently including in this, and not just personalities, but susceptibility to things like cabin fever, all this kind of stuff. Okay, I don't know if it's really quite long enough, but I wonder about the psychological side is basically untested in that
Absolutely,
sense,
yeah.
and they're
That's
going to
almost
need
going
some
to
good contingency plans for if things start going a bit wrong on board or whatever. Have to have a little jail.
shit. Yeah, well, they have to have SpaceX security on board or some kind of security.
Right?
Um,
Was that said in the talk?
no, I'm just what you just said there. They're going to have a
Oh,
little
right.
jail. Yeah. What if someone kicks off? What if there's someone gets violent? What are
Yeah.
you going to do about that?
Someone gets absolutely trashed because there's like they've just received there's news about they're watching a football game or something streamed from Earth, and they lose. They get drunk and start trying to break the spaceship.
I think you'd imagine that it's a dry ship. I think carrying alcohol might be a bad idea.
I don't think there's the room for it, is there?
Probably not. I imagine people. I was thinking about this as well, actually, and we sort of jumped onto talking about what it's going to be like to go there. But
Yeah, we'll just roll with it.
I was thinking about people. If people like spill drinks inside this thing, you're going to have loads of little droplets of water floating around. But if people puke,
Well, they're all going to be space sick to start with.
yeah, they're all going to be space sick. And I mean, I don't think there's going to be sort of just, I don't know, it's not going to smell very good, and there's going to be sort of dirt and crap floating around everywhere. I mean, how do you keep it clean? Maybe you have like little kind of vacuum vents everywhere that continuously suck in all the stuff, all the crap.
Yeah, it will be interesting because 3 months is a long time, right? I've actually I spoke to an astronaut a while back who I met on while I was in Idaho, and he was saying that on one of the shuttle missions they had some problem with the toilet system that meant that there was loads of like urine floating around.
Oh man.
And when they landed, the first, and this is the sort of stuff you don't hear on the press releases more. When they landed, the guy, the tech crews came in, and like the first people in basically opened it up, and all the astronauts had been used to it over that period of time in the shuttle.
Yeah.
But apparently it was just like awful. Just the whole thing stank of like ammonia. they had to include on those shuttle missions, because it's such a pain to like take out stuff. It's such like a big deal because they inventory everything very carefully, and apparently it's a big logistical pain to remove things. And so what they wouldn't do is remove all the they have different ways you can like urinate whilst you're out in space, and they didn't remove the female adapters basically. And the male ones, there was something wrong with the way the male ones worked with the pumping system. So they had to use the female ones, but it doesn't always go well apparently. And so they were lucky they had those at all, but it meant that there was some problems. They left them on there just because, and they were glad they had left them on there because otherwise it would have been even worse apparently.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to assume that with the SpaceX thing, there'll be, I don't know, like some way of cleaning the thing in transit, because 3 months, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is, and 100 people. I mean, people are messy. People. He's talking about having a restaurant, but it's a 0G restaurant.
How do you cook stuff? What's the restaurant? Is it just like we rehydrate this stuff for you? Presumably, something like that.
Yeah, surely it's just going to be a place where you go and you choose like from like a list of like 5 food items that's the same every day.
Well, they're going to have to. I mean, if we think about it, they can't really be cooking or preparing stuff individually, right?
No,
because you don't want that. You don't want people pissing around with hot water or doing whatever. You'd assume you centralize that in the restaurant or whatever it is, and that's all prepared there for you, and you have sort of meal times, I guess, that people go and collect food. That you would have to treat it almost like an army camp in that way.
Yeah, and you can't really have tables in the same sense. What do you do? You just sort of float around. Presumably there'll be loads of just surfaces and straps and things to hold onto and slip your feet into, and on almost any surface there'll be places to kind of anchor yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't sit down to eat. You'll just sort of, it's like 100 people floating in a room just sort of eating. Different angles.
So that's what I'm thinking. It's going to be messy. You go to like a restaurant, especially a busy one. For some reason, I'm imagining like a food court in like a shopping mall or something.
Right, yeah.
It's crap everywhere. There's like rubbish on the floor and bits of food everywhere. And
I don't think they'll have the opportunity to be quite as, the context is very different, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
You've got to live in this space.
And all the food will probably come in little sort of sealed sachets that you squeeze into your mouth.
Probably, exactly, yeah. Yeah, so interesting. It'll be interesting to see what like life would be like over those 3 months within this thing. Is this thing going to act as a habitat as well when they land?
Good question. They didn't really talk about that.
Well, we'll talk about the habitats in a bit, or whatever. Is there anything else you want to talk about the spaceship? What about the heat shield? That had me a little bit worried.
Yeah, because that thing is going to be coming in really hard into that Martian atmosphere.
And back into Earth as well.
Yeah, back into Earth. Yeah, good point. Yeah, that's even worse.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to think. Do you remember what this is made of? It's some composite, like carbon composite thing.
Some ceramic-y thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got an acronym that I can't remember.
When I say it had me worried, I meant in the sense that if we look at things like the space shuttle heat shield, which was considered not necessarily problematic, but it was a large surface area. There's more chance it's going to go wrong than in comparison to a capsule type heat shield.
Yeah.
Something that large. Think how big that guy was stood next to the oxygen tank, and then the size of that ship. You've got to maintain that heat shield perfectly. You can't have any gaps in it or anything because the whole thing's going to blow up like the Columbia,
Columbia,
like Columbia did. And that was from a piece of foam, wasn't it, damaging the heat shield when it launched?
Yes, it was.
You can't have any accidents or any damage to that heat shield. Presumably you're going to have to check it in orbit or whatever. Yeah. It is coming through the atmosphere. And so, yeah, it's fine. So, that's a big point of failure, basically.
It is, yeah. But I think one of the weak points of the shuttle designs was the fact that their heat shields were quite complex. They're complex shapes. So you had to protect heat from all these kind of angles and weird little like weak points on the design, on the shape of the vehicle.
Right.
like where the wings join the fuselage and places like that.
Oh yeah, because obviously it's got to glide down, whereas this doesn't glide down; it propulsively lands. So
Yeah, I mean, as it enters the atmosphere, as you can see in this picture, it's going to be at the angle to present the maximum surface area to the atmosphere, but it's still going to be essentially just a smooth, flat surface. Unlike the shuttle, which had all these kind of strange overlapping tiles, and they had to like work out ways of getting the edges of the wings protected and stuff like that as well. So in that
sure.
sense, it's probably easier to keep it protected than the space shuttle. But I still feel like they aren't going to get many uses out of a single heat shield, are they? I mean,
But they talked about. I seem to remember when they were talking about the Dragon stuff. There were quite a number of different reuses they were looking at. Like lots of cycles before they have to replace it. I think it remains to be seen how many they are able to do with one of these massive ships, and also with the Dragon capsules.
so
The idea is that you can do multiple reuses without having to repair it.
yeah, and they may even need to eventually have some way of constructing heat shield material on Mars. I don't know. I mean, if you land on Mars and you've discovered that your heat shield is like knackered, you want to be able to fix it. Otherwise, you won't be able to return. Although I don't know. I guess maybe at least in the first sort of set of missions, if you find a problem with the ship after you've landed on Mars, then you just say, right, well, that's retiring that ship, and we'll just get the next one. We'll use the next one.
Yeah, it'll be more risky for the first cruise.
Oh yeah. There's going to be the first cruise are going to have to be pretty hardcore.
He said they're going to basically to be one of those people, you're just going to have to be ready to die.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's true, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just a funny way of sort of putting it.
Imagine if the first one of these with people on it is lost somehow, some anomaly.
Yeah, I imagine they won't send out 100 people to start with, will they?
No, definitely not. No, I don't know how many. I've got no idea.
Yeah.
But you'd imagine that the first trip would probably be highly trained astronauts and scientists. I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want people who are going to be able to do sort of engineering stuff and building and things as well. So maybe you would have a good sort of complement of like 20, 30 people. I don't know.
Yeah, quite possibly. You probably fly an unmanned version of it a few times and then put a reasonable amount of people on. I mean, it's not going to be cheap to test fly it, and not going to be cheap to send those first few missions out. So I suppose you want to maximize return. I mean, whatever Mars mission you do, the first people that go are going to be in huge amounts of danger.
Yeah, definitely. Can you imagine the first one of these to fly to Mars? No, I'm not talking about with people. I just mean an unmanned trial version. The Red Dragon, if that actually happens in 2 years' time, is going to be fucking amazing and just super exciting. But this thing, just imagine the excitement of that. Like hearing, like after 3 months, that it's doing its entry, descent, and landing on Mars.
Yeah, you mean with people in?
No, even just
the unmanned ones. Yeah, it will be a big deal. I just can't. It's just the size of it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just to see that thing flying, just a crazy thing. So it's got, what has that got? It's got 9 Raptor engines on the bottom of it.
Yeah. So 9 Raptor engines on the bottom, 6 of which are like massive vacuum ones. They're the same engine, but instead of they're the same engine, but the engine bell's just a different shape, much bigger.
Than what? Bigger than the ones that are on the booster?
Yeah.
How come?
So the sea level. So it's the same with the Merlins as well. Like the sea level engines are different because of the just the way that they work in atmospheric pressure compared to in vacuum.
Right. Okay.
You have to have a different, like, I think it's called the expansion ratio, just the engine throat diameter compared to the actual engine bell nozzle diameter. So for the sea level ones, that's much smaller, whereas for the vacuum ones, you have these giant bells.
Okay.
So if you look at the back end of that spaceship, I've still got the thing open. I'll find it. Then you can
they're a lot bigger. The ones on the edges are for the vacuum, the bigger ones.
Yeah. And then you got I think 3, possibly 3. Here we go. 3 normal.
Oh yeah.
Raptors on the edge. Oh, sorry, in the middle, which are gimbaling and everything as well. So down here.
And that thing is basically the launch escape system as well.
Yeah, that's what he said. I got the
I guess
feeling.
so.
Well, yeah, it is. I got the feeling because he said all that in like a Q&A, right? A press Q&A.
Yeah.
And I got the feeling that he's not really thinking about launch escape systems.
Oh,
I think
really? Why do
I
you think?
think the idea is to just engineer out the risks enough so that you don't have a launch escape system on a 747. Um,
No.
so
747 is quite a well test. Yeah, sure. No, I understand.
I
Why,
think
why, why did you get that impression then?
I think because he was I don't know, basically, but I think mainly because of stuff I was reading and people saying that these rockets, if they fire, will essentially destroy the first stage booster when they fire.
Oh yeah.
So launch
Although
escape
that didn't
system.
happen on that that little Blue Origin one, but
Yeah, it
obviously it's
didn't, but
very
they
different
were. I
technology.
think yeah, it's very different technology. Anyway, I don't. Yeah, so it might be that it works as a launch escape, and he certainly seemed to say that it would.
I imagine PR wise, getting people to go on this thing,
You need a
they
launchable.
need one.
Yeah, yeah, you're probably right.
I mean, that thing, the spaceship, can go into orbit on its own.
Yeah,
Apparently, if you basically strip a load of the crap out and sort of re-engineer it a little bit, and they did. We'll talk about other use cases for this in a bit, but that would suggest that it's a very capable, and obviously it's flying it to Mars and entering and exiting Mars atmosphere on its own. So it's a very capable piece of kit, regardless of whether it's got a booster or not.
yeah,
You'll probably find that it can just detach and propulsively land, or
yeah,
whatever. It's too big to
yeah.
parachute down. I wonder if it would even have any parachute. Sure, it's just too large. You have to propulsively land it, or that's it.
I reckon so. Yeah, I can't see it landing any other way. Imagine it trying to splash down or something. It's gonna hit the sea so hard. The sea will be like
Yeah,
concrete at that kind of velocity.
it's just too big for parachute. Just way too
Yeah.
big.
So one thing I was thinking about when looking at this stuff, and I'll just get that diagram back up so we can look at it. But there's the actual like cargo, which is going to be in this kind of section above the fuel tanks. It's going to be a really long way from the ground. And actually, for that matter, so are the crew.
How do the crew get out?
Yeah, in the video that they play, that you see the kind of doors open at the end of the video, and these kind of crew members are looking out at the landscape of Mars. But
They
it's
just
like,
jump off.
yeah, I mean, there's low gravity, but it's not that though.
No. Yeah,
Is there gonna be
interesting.
a
I
crane
guess
system?
the crew system, the crew thing will just be a case of I don't know. They're obviously, it's not an insurmountable thing to design, but it is something I hadn't thought of. Yeah, that they are very far off the ground, aren't they?
Yeah,
I mean, think of the size of that tanker again, and the little guy compared to it. And that's you're basically on a giant like sky, like a building on the edge of
yeah,
a building.
yeah. You're on the top of like an 8 or 10-story building almost, and you have to get down. And it's the people are almost less of an issue than the cargo. I mean, you could have like a really long ladder or something for the people. Wouldn't be ideal.
No,
But how do you get down 400 tons of cargo?
I wonder how stable it is as well, sat on the sort of engines,
I
on the
reckon it's
surface of
pretty.
Mars.
I reckon it'll be pretty stable. Because once it's empty, most of the weight is going to be the engines.
Not all the cargo and all that crap at the
Oh,
top.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. They're going to have some kind of crane system that just comes out and lowers stuff down.
Yeah, they'll probably have a winch system that sticks out the side.
Yeah, that's going to look cool.
Yeah, there'll be something like that.
Speaking of looking cool,
Oh,
this. So this is obviously a picture of it in flight, and that's in front of Jupiter because he talked about it being able to basically go anywhere in the solar system, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a bit later. That's very, very cool. It looks awesome in flight. I mean, that spaceship just looks like something straight out of a film or something. It's just fucking cool looking thing. In fact, it's better than that. It doesn't look like something out of a film. It looks like something that is actually going to exist in our future.
Yeah, I like the way they've gone for the black and white.
Yeah. But what about the solar arrays?
They look like rabbit ears.
Yeah, I'm not that big a fan of them.
What you mean aesthetically?
Yeah. I mean, obviously that doesn't matter at all.
No.
Really, but it matters a little bit.
They should have made it look better.
It's got to look cool. I don't know. I mean, maybe they won't actually end up looking like that anyway. But
So why don't you like them?
I don't
I
know.
think that looks pretty cool.
It's okay. There was something about on the video when it was cruising to Mars, and then these little things just started kind of poking out of the sides. I was a bit like, wait, what?
How do they fold out then? Because they're obviously longer. They must fold it. I don't know. Yeah,
They must do. They look like they just kind of telescoped out somehow.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, they'll do the job, obviously. And when you see that thing in real life, it's going to look crazy cool. Just imagine seeing it hanging in front of the blue jewel of the Earth before it leaves for Mars. Imagine that. Imagine being on it before it leaves for Mars, ready, like everything packed away in your little cabin.
Yeah.
You know, you're just ready to go. You're looking out that huge window down to the Earth.
What I want to know is and I'm sure I know the answer, which is no. Is will you be allowed to go outside the spacecraft? Basically, I want to hang, beyond. You obviously won't be allowed to do this. There's no way.
No.
But, I wonder if there's going to be an airlock because they may have to go out and repair stuff. I imagine there probably will be an airlock. If something goes tits up and they've got to go and put a new block on the heat shield or something,
yeah,
they may have to do an EVA. Basically what I want to do is go outside while it's on transit from Earth to Mars and just hang in that void.
Yeah, when you've got the Earth and Mars are
disappeared.
Yeah,
they're both
stars,
like
pinpricks. Yeah. Oh my god!
And you're just in the middle. In the universe.
You're in the middle of this void, just hanging there. That would be. I can't even imagine what that would be like.
Yeah.
I quite like the idea of doing an EVA whilst in orbit around Mars as well.
Oh god, yeah. I think they could design in something, whether it happens on the early missions or or even quite considerably into the program, but some way of allowing the general public to do something like that.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's very dangerous and you have to be very, very careful, and they're very carefully constructed EVA timelines, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But if there is a kind of very safe version that you could do with people, that just kind of allows them to have that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it might start out just like a VR type thing with a little drone outside the ship.
Yeah, that's not going to be as good though.
No, obviously not. But then, like everything, the more we do it and the more we learn about it, technology becomes safer and more mundane. When they first designed like cars, it was thought that only highly skilled sort of people would ever be able to operate them. And now everyone's got a car.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a bad analogy, but you'd imagine you're never going to get rid of all the risk from it. But you'd imagine we'd get to a point where we're so comfortable with the technology for doing EVAs, that we just sort of do it. You might have like an AI in your suit that sort of looks after all the like dodgy stuff.
Yeah, or I'm thinking some sort of like tethered vehicle, or even like a rail system where you sit down on a seat in a particular, like a bubble thing that's all like contained and stuff, and then it sort of has a sort of a track that runs around the outside of the spacecraft, and you just kind of like ride that thing round and then back in. Like something like that. That's very, very kind of you don't have much control over it.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I can see that. I can see something like that happening. Yeah, so you just kind of strap in and then go for a little. That will help massively as well with that feeling of cabin fever that you might get from these long missions.
Possibly, yeah.
But I think that ultimately is just going to be a case of getting just as much entertainment on board as possible. A little place to have some privacy and some entertainment.
Definitely need that.
Yeah, and that doesn't need to be big. Like 100 cabins. The cabins can be like the size of a shower, basically, in 0G.
Mm.
You just, like they have on the ISS. You just got a place
that'd be
to
claustrophobic
sleep.
though for certain people. I mean, that may just be if you are very claustrophobic. Sorry.
I think that's going to be the case, because I think in 0G apparently your perception is a little bit different, and claustrophobia doesn't feature so much.
Right.
Yeah, it's something to do with things don't feel so small when you don't have a perception of a floor or a ceiling or walls. So like your cabin will have one side of it would be like your sleeping bed place, and then there'll be the other side will be like a wardrobe, and then maybe like your computer, like entertainment sort of system, a screen or whatever. and then like a window on one floor, and then I don't know, whatever. Every floor is taken up, every wall is taken up with something. I don't know. Describing it sounds like it would be claustrophobic. It would feel like kind of climbing into a little capsule. But I think in zero G, I don't know, it wouldn't feel like that so much, because you can turn any which way and you're kind of looking at a different perspective on the room.
Right.
It would feel bigger. And I'm not just talking like saying I think that's what would happen. Astronauts report that that's how they feel in these little ISS cabins. So,
okay, well that's interesting. I didn't know that.
I'd love it if there were windows in these little cabins.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of little windows. If you look at the design of the ship, they go all the way around the back of it. Maybe you have to pay more for a window room.
Yeah, I'd fork that out.
Would you?
I'm already thinking of starting saving up for this.
Yeah, it's the price of a small. They said a small house in the US or something, or was it the average US house price? I can't remember exactly what the house.
I think it's average-ish. But again, the price of that went down since the last I heard it. He was aiming for 500,000. I think the price he quoted in the talk was like down to like 200 or something.
Right. Okay. Yeah. He said that. Yeah. He said 140, wasn't it? 140,000, and then get it down hopefully below 100,000 as they iterate.
Unbelievable.
That's dollars as well.
Yeah. It's just, you might as well be paying for it with peanuts, like literally. It's just like how that's crazy. I don't know. I mean, we'll talk about costs soon, but how he's going to do that. Crazy. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to start saving. Maybe 30 years, 20 to 25 years after the first missions, I'll go.
20 to what? Sorry, 20 to
25 years after the first mission, when there's already like a good like community and it's stable and
it's safe.
Yeah.
Not going to be a pioneer then.
I mean, sort of. You still be within the first sort of few tens of thousands of people.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Definitely worth thinking about saving that money. It's like, but at some point you're going to have, that's enough money to buy a house. It's almost not in the UK, but some parts of the UK. But that's not just having that money sat there going, I'm using that to go to Mars. I'm not going to buy a house because I'm just pissing away money with rent.
Yeah, but if the system was up and running and people were going to Mars and there was a civilization being in the process of being built on Mars, you might think about it the other way around. You might think, I'm buying a house with all this money on Earth, but I could be spending it on going to Mars.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Going to Mars.
Yeah, if there are other people going, then yeah, that's a different kettle of fish, isn't it?
But only if they change those goddamn solar arrays. I'm not getting on it.
Ugly. I don't think it looks that ugly.
No, it doesn't really. It just looks like a little kind of bird or something.
Yeah. It does look a bit like a bow, in like a girl's hair.
Yes. It would be better if they came out just like the sides instead of up like that. If they came out the sides, so they were 180 degrees. I don't know. This is just, I don't know why I'm spending so much time laboring on this.
Do you reckon there'll be? Wait, don't stop moving. It'll be hard to cut in. Do you reckon we'll invent like a whole kind of series of like new zero G games to kind of pass the time? I mean, I guess because normally when when astronauts are in space on like the ISS and stuff, they don't really have much free time. Whereas on this, you need to kill boredom.
Yeah, it's going to be the opposite problem. People are going to have too much free time.
Yeah. So if you want to make, obviously games are a good way to pass the time. You could have like traditional Earth-based games, right? Like chess and stuff, except for with like Velcro, and you just sort of
magnets
stick or magnets or whatever. But
video games and VR, we've already mentioned VR.
Yeah, we've talked about those. What about, I suppose there's not going to be a huge amount of space to mess around with some kind of like almost VR, like a zero G sport. So you can't be like lobbing a ball around in a room because there's no space. I'm just wondering if there's going to be any boredom people will come up with games.
I don't know. So I'm imagining that like where that massive window is at the front of the ship,
Yeah.
if that window still, exists in the final design. I'm imagining like a kind of an open area there, just to chill out in and look out the
Well,
window.
that's on the rendering, or on
Yeah,
one of the bits. There's like someone floating in front of that window, I think.
yeah, yeah. That's
Which
exactly
I guess
right.
is giving you that impression, or us that impression.
Yeah. So if there is that open space, even if like there aren't any games or whatever designed by SpaceX or whatever beforehand, I reckon people would sort of come up with them.
That's what sort of what I meant.
I don't know, maybe like grappling in space or something, like some kind of like physical like I don't know.
Can't risk injuries.
Yeah, but it would. I don't know. Maybe if I'm imagining it all to be
People
kind of
probably do
padded,
it
all kind of padded and nice in there.
though. Possibly.
I mean, stuff like I don't know, races and stuff. But I mean, yeah, something an actual sport with a
Like
with
chucking a ball around, just
chucking a ball around.
I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know. There must be something you can do. You got to
yeah,
keep people active. How do people? Yeah, that's another thing. They're going to have to have some sort of like gym-y type facilities or something like that, won't they?
yeah.
Um, Try and keep people's, because they're obviously going to land on Mars and have the whole problem of, oh crap, I haven't been used to gravity for 3 months. We've all landed here and none of us can walk.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna have a really strict exercise regime, I reckon, just like on the ISS. Um, there'll be a gym section, and you'll have like every passenger will have some like reminder every day, time for your exercise. Or something. And you just like watch a film, stick on a film or something, and just like cycle on the bike and like do some upper body stuff for a bit, and then, that's every day, and then go and have some kind of weird zero-G shower. What's a shower going to be? I guess you just
Well,
wipe yourself down.
Well, that's what they do on the ISS, but it's not very. If they want to make this like a floating hotel, then
It's not going to be. I mean, it's not going to be that luxurious, is it? It's going to
no,
be.
no, that's what he seemed to be making out. But no, no, it's
So,
not.
here's that image of the person floating in front of the window,
Yeah,
and it's massive. I still can't get over how big it is in there.
I know.
I mean, maybe that's not particularly accurate, the size of it there, but
It's a lot of space, just space in there. I suppose you need that though.
But I reckon that's a good idea to have that front end of the rocket just reserved for space, so people can. It's fun to just be in zero-G. Like that's something that a lot of people will just find fun, like inherently fun, and to have the time to kind of explore that and get good at floating around and playing in zero-G will be fun.
Definitely.
I mean, I'd be well up for that.
For sure.
Start doing flips and I don't know.
Yeah, you'd get bored of the flips probably. Well, I don't know. I'm just, yeah.
I probably wouldn't get bored of just kind of navigating my way around the ship.
No, that wouldn't get old in 3 months.
So you can imagine from where that person is in this picture here, if you were to like look down, you'd just see the whole of the ship below you with the restaurant and all the cabins further down or whatever, wherever they are. And
they're behind the person, aren't they, in this image?
Oh yeah, I was imagining it to be below them, but yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
I think based on the shape of the ship.
Yeah, you're probably right. So yeah, they turn around and look, and you can see all the cabins and the restaurant, and there's no like kind of up or down. It's all just everything's everywhere. And just imagine just propelling yourself through it and just kind of, I don't know, just exploring.
Oh yeah, it'd be so cool.
It would be fucking cool, wouldn't it?
Being close up against that window as well, you probably get like a vertigo-y type feeling.
Yeah.
What do you reckon will happen then when they all get there and no one can walk? Then we just mentioned this because obviously the gravity on Mars isn't as strong as on Earth, but they're still not going to be able to get around.
No, it's a lot weaker. Remember, it's a third of Earth.
Yeah, that's what I just said. But surely they still can't. Maybe
they'll be a bit shaky at first, but I don't think they'll be anywhere near as bad as like the ISS people when they come back. Because for a start, they're there on the ISS for about twice as long, and Earth is a beast when it comes to gravity compared to Mars.
Yeah, I still think that, I don't know, but I would still imagine it would be difficult. I mean, 3 months, I don't know how long it takes for the muscle wasting to kind of get to a point where it's stable, on the ISS or in zero-G.
It's probably going to suck for a bit, yeah.
Well, just not if nobody can walk, what do they all do? Just sit in the space? I suppose they probably have to do that. They probably have like a period of time where they're just all in the spacecraft when there's no one else there.
Yeah, you'd imagine that maybe all those cabins that they all live in are going to be
Kitted out.
arranged. Yeah, well, arranged in such a way that the beds are actually like flat, so when they land, they can lie in the beds and sort of chill. I don't know.
And yeah, it'd just be interesting.
There'll have to be seats for all of them, for launches and stuff. There'll have to have 100 seats on there to people to strap into for a launch. I wonder if that would be up in that top bit by the window. Oh man.
Oh god. They'll have to be the sort of. They'll all have to be orientated, won't they, towards the top of the vehicle, so so people, get pressed back into their seats and whatnot as it takes off.
Yeah. Just imagine. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
A bit of an aside. Just imagine you've paid for your ticket and you're awaiting a slot on a launch, and then you get one and you travel to the Cape, and that by that time there'll be like a whole sort of infrastructure at the Cape for frequent multiple launches of these things. There'll be tons of launch complexes firing them off all the time, and you're at the Cape sort of awaiting your launch, and you see a few of these things coming out, like landing and launching and landing, and you're getting ready, and then you climb onto the rocket. Oh my god.
Just imagine launching sat in front of that window. It'd be fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
There's no. I mean, that doesn't look a realistic sized window to me.
No, it doesn't there in that picture for sure.
But
no, some kind of small window or like medium sized.
No, I want that. I want that. Now they've teased it. I want it.
maybe we're just underestimate. Maybe they can do it really light, and maybe it's not glass. It's some kind of. Well, it won't be. I guess. Well, maybe it could be.
It'd be some sort of. I don't know. It's probably maybe a polymer of some sort. I'm not really sure.
Like diamond.
Well, it's not going to be going through re-entry, is it? That's shielded.
Yeah, that's the other side.
Think of the space shuttle window, the deck window at the front. I mean, that's like an aeroplane.
Yeah.
This is just like a massive aeroplane.
Yeah.
It's like the window you'd see underneath like a blimp or something.
It's a bit like a bigger version of the cupola thing on the ISS.
Yeah.
Kind of.
A lot bigger, like 4 times the size. Yeah.
We'll have to see. It'd be really interesting to see how the actual design and the hardware looks when it's produced.
This is all from the CAD designs, isn't it? That they've put this stuff together. So I mean, they must be realistically thinking this is a real thing to stick this window in.
I would have thought so.
Otherwise, why would they put it there?
They would have done the maths. They would have known that it's possible. I would have thought.
Yeah. Guess so. Do you reckon they'll get internet?
Good question.
Probably not. I imagine they'll. If it depends how much they upgrade the deep space network, they'll probably have to for Mars quite substantially upgrade it if they have a colony there.
Oh yeah, there'll be a whole new infrastructure built for it, presumably.
Yeah, but they might be able to access some sort of something, in terms of internet, in terms of like a data dump or something like that.
Yeah, like every day or something, some kind of cached version of thousands of websites just gets sent to like the most popular sort of 10,000 websites or something. I don't know. Be a bit weird.
Yeah, not sure. I mean, it's obviously not a critical for life support type thing, but if they want to make it as nice as possible, I imagine people would want to stay in contact with what's going on Earth.
You'd have like a huge library of movies and TV shows and stuff like that, probably. Yeah. It's going to be good fun for those astronauts.
Definitely a bit skanky though after 100 days or whatever.
You'll be looking forward to getting out for sure. Yeah,
but you can't get out. That's the thing. You get to Mars and you don't get out anywhere.
This is why I want to go 20 years after the first flights, because by that point there'll hopefully be it would just be way nicer on Mars than it
like proper habitats.
Yeah, I imagine like a parkland or something, like under a dome, like a stream and some trees.
Okay, let's just talk about the habitats briefly then. So SpaceX, I mean, obviously there was no announcement of these types of habitats. And we said maybe the ship itself would be used as a habitat for, certainly for the first few crews.
Yeah.
They're obviously taking cargo with them. Whether that cargo would consist of parts of habitats, it would presumably begin to transport stuff there to build those habitats. I guess we'll be looking at some sort of inflatable habitats, at least to begin with.
Probably. They're good for space saving, I guess.
Yeah, almost like those Bigelow.
Yeah, could even be Bigelow, the designs of the initial batch.
Yes.
But then I mean, obviously you're going to have to get away from shipping in everything from Earth.
Yeah, but initially you need to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And initially, obviously, as we were saying earlier, the first few missions will be cargo only, no humans, probably. So you'll have tons of inflatable habitats, tons of probably vehicles and all kinds of like machinery sent up.
Ideally, you want those habitats set up for when people get there. You have to do that robotically somehow.
Yeah. So there'll be a whole load of that kind of thing. I mean, SpaceX have said though that they're not, that's not their thing. They're just going to build the transport system, and then if you build it, they will come.
Sure.
It's like the ethos.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of someone like the Bigelow system making one or whatever. I think NASA's got a few competitions out to design Mars habitats, and there's various ideas floating around. I wouldn't be surprised. Is there? I mean, I've not heard of any, but if some Silicon Valley companies then set up to go and do that, some billionaire of some sort goes and sets up a company to build the habitats, and this sort of shit goes down.
It'll be really interesting to see, if as more and more people take this idea seriously, because I think people are already taking it seriously, like obviously far more seriously than they would have 10 years ago, for example.
Oh yeah.
But if people, already established companies or new companies start emerging that start to work on Mars colony hardware, like habitats, rovers, robotics, everything, hydroponics, you start to see these companies actually doing this. It's going to start to feel like a really tangible sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course, not just habitats. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's food production systems, like everything. And normally this stuff is all developed in-house by someone like NASA. I say in-house, I mean across a bunch of different universities and research facilities. But
it's all government-funded research, basically.
Yes, but this would be, it would require some input from government-funded sources, as Elon said during the talk, and the support of them. But yeah, I mean, you could legitimately set up companies to cover all these different new aspects of going to Mars and competing with each other and all this sort of stuff, which that's what you want.
Yeah. It's going to be
cool. So, okay, industry. What impacts do you reckon this is going to have on the space industry generally as a whole? I mean, we just talked about maybe a new part of the space industry may come alive, developing habitats, developing all sorts of different aspects of mission architecture to achieve a colony on Mars. But in terms of the space industry as we know it now, in terms of the laws, particularly the accessing low Earth orbit, accessing other parts of the solar system, competition with ULA, Boeing, Lockheed, Orbital ATK, all these types of things. Do you think this system, if it comes to fruition, will have an impact on the industry and I suppose things like the SLS as well?
I mean, if it comes to fruition, yeah. I mean, everything else is going to seem pointless, like horse and carts in comparison.
Well, there's still going to be specific use cases, right? For this, I mean, they're not all just going to be. You're not going to be putting up everything with these giant rockets. You're going to be. There's still going to be lots of use cases for smaller reusable rockets, Falcon 9s, whatever.
Yeah. So if you have, so that you're dead right. But if you have full reusability in a rocket system that's very reliable, which obviously Falcon 9's reliability is a little bit shaky at this point, but it will get there. You'd hope. Let's assume it does.
Well, based on the track, not based on SpaceX track record particularly, but based on the trajectory that other vehicles have taken, like the Atlas and stuff, that was crashing all over the place to start with, and now it's got a really good record.
Yeah. So once you have fully reusable rockets, like the smaller stuff like Falcon 9, and then also these giant heavy lift things, Falcon Heavy, and then obviously this thing as well, you suddenly, I mean, other companies will just have to compete with that. Otherwise, they'll cease to get any business at all, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely. I agree. Reusability is a must for up and if you want companies want to stay competitive. I mean, in terms of
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, specifically the Mars vehicle. I mean, are they going to use it to transport not like maybe swarms of smaller satellites? So you just have this boost thing, and it just you kind of you'd probably have to rebuild the vehicle, the Mars vehicle itself. So they're having like a version that refuels the spaceship, essentially like a cargo or a refueling type version. Maybe there'll be a variant as well where it transports. It's like a space shuttle almost. It has like a cargo bay and just dumps a load of stuff out into space for various use cases, or transports up like a space station, half a space station in one go.
Yeah,
or, I mean, you could space hotel and all this kind of stuff.
Presumably, if you're using inflatable components like the Bigelow stuff, and you're clever about the way you pack it, you could pack a pretty massive hotel into one of those things.
Yeah.
If you just replace all of the cargo and crew areas with just an inflatable space station, it could be huge. So yeah, you could start seeing real orbital habitats being set up on a big scale, and then companies like Blue Origin and other companies like flying people back and forth to them.
I've just thought of a cool feat. Right, okay, listen to this piece of don't worry about it. Listen to this, right?
Yeah.
The ISS weighs 450 tons. No, once completed.
Easy. So you could lift the entire ISS in one launch.
Yeah, plus some, provided the space was there.
Yeah.
You could. It's 550 tons into low Earth orbit.
Nuts.
Just the whole thing in one go.
And then you start thinking about like mining equipment to asteroids and heavy duty stuff. You could take like the equivalent of an oil rig up into space in a few
oil rig
in a few launches. I mean, obviously not an oil rig.
No, sure, yeah.
Something of that kind of size.
But you piece together, big pieces of mining machinery.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, jeez. But I also wonder. I'd love to see. What did the meeting, like the boardroom in ULA, look like, or what were people saying the day after the Mars announcement? Because obviously all the hardware and stuff, like if that all comes to fruition, then the other companies are going to have to scramble to match it or to compete in some way or to offer some other service. But the Mars ambition, the ambition of colonizing Mars, where do other companies is that something that they're just like, oh, who cares about that, and not bothered? Or do they look further ahead and think this is actually going to be massive, like the biggest thing that's ever happened? We need a piece of it.
Yeah, almost like the way sort of electronics companies jump on new technologies. So say Apple created what became the modern smartphone with the iPhone, and lots of other companies like Microsoft were sort of like, nah, no one's going to pay that much for a phone, blah blah blah. And then obviously it did very well, and everyone jumped on that bandwagon. I feel like it's something similar. So I think companies like ULA are probably less ideologically driven than SpaceX. They're more traditional companies, basically.
Yeah.
So I would expect that it would be a sort of sit back and see how it goes type scenario in terms of taking stuff to Mars. I mean, there's no evidence that they're developing anything or have any ideas to developing anything like SpaceX is doing. And it is, in a way, I mean, it's a huge financial risk, and we'll talk about whether it will actually happen a bit later, but it's a huge financial risk for a company to outlay that much money on, if you're just thinking it in business terms, on a market that doesn't exist at the moment.
Yeah.
And so, because although SpaceX is like its goal is just basically to do that, that's its thing, and that's, if it dies doing that, that will, it won't be considered a success, but that will have been worthwhile, provided it contributes in some way to eventually reaching that goal. That's what Elon said in his talk. I think ULA and other companies think like that.
No, definitely not. No, of course not. But it's interesting that the head of ULA, well, there was an article about it saying that he's come forward and said that the Boeing, sorry, not the head of ULA, the head of Boeing said that it will be a Boeing rocket that lands the first human on Mars. I think he was referring to the SLS or something along the lines of the SLS. But it's obviously, it's obviously want to appear like they're responding to the SpaceX announcement.
Certainly. And I think, they see that maybe as, I think they probably see it as an image problem, in the sense that SpaceX are very good at marketing themselves, and getting the fans on board, if you like. I mean, I'm not sure how important that is really to the space industry in general. But in terms of being seen as like a leading company, just having this thing on the back burner does, I suppose, help SpaceX in terms of image.
Yeah, massively.
Boeing and that, which are, putting money in, or are contracted to help build the SLS and things like that, are wanting to make sure that people realize they're doing something that is also, ambitious in that way. I don't think ULA is going to really get on board with this until it makes financial sense, until it's kind of a more secure route to profits, I suppose. And with any other kind of launch provider, it's going to be sit back and see what happens.
I think that's probably right. And I've just realized it's getting really dark in here. So before I just disappear entirely, I'm need to turn the lights on.
Sure, go for it.
That's better. I still exist.
There we go.
So another thing that Elon was talking about, I mean, I think he sort of mentioned it in part, not really in passing, but he was sort of kind of laughing at the prospect of it, because I think it would be very expensive, but using the spaceship as a ways of rapid transport around the Earth. For cargo and people, I guess, because you could do sort of suborbital hops with it.
I remember him talking about that, landing offshore, potentially have like a landing platform offshore and on either side, and get the thing, I think, round the globe. It was really quick times. Was it like, I can't remember exactly. I think I mentioned it in the other video. Very short though.
Yeah, really quick hops. Like, I don't remember the exact times either, but like a matter of hours to get basically anywhere.
It wasn't even that.
Possibly not even that, no.
Yeah. So, but the idea was that would be a very, very expensive.
But maybe there's a market for it. Maybe there will be a market for people who want to pay for really rapid deployment or shipment of something. Who knows?
He did say about cargo, didn't he? He didn't seem to be talking about using it for people particularly. I don't know.
No, I mean, we'll have to see. I think if this hardware gets into operation, there's probably going to be so many uses for it that haven't been fully thought out at this point.
I don't. Obviously, the idea of this is presumably it's not going to be replacing, it's not going to be the standard high-speed transport around the globe.
Just jump on a SpaceX ITS to get to like New York or something.
But it might take a bite, depending on the cost. It might take a bite out of the market of something, very, very high-end air travel or something like that.
Rapid courier for really rich people. Or what about like deployment of like troops or military hardware?
Oh shit! Yeah.
Just land that thing in the middle of a battlefield, in the middle of like
that's a crazy idea.
Place, and then all these tanks kind of roll, or not tanks, whatever, sort of drones or whatever come out of it.
Use it as a really obvious spy plane or something as well. Just like blast itself really noisily across somewhere. I'm sure there's lots of other use cases for it. We will see how that kind of works. I suppose as they iterate on it, it's going to be used a lot. It's going to be something that's going to have a lot of mileage in its various forms, and so you would have thought that the problems that you come across that you don't normally get to iron out with space programs because there's so few launches. Maybe that gets to a point where they are ironed out and it becomes a very reliable type of transport.
Yeah.
Who knows?
They're going to have to build a shitload of them as well. I mean, for the plan of colonizing Mars, you need thousands of these things.
Yes.
So if you have a whole fleet of these things, like thousands of them in operation, I mean, how the hell are they going to build thousands of these massive spacecraft? I don't know. I mean, I guess that's further down the road than the initial few missions.
Yeah, exactly. That's all going to be predicated on how it all goes to start with, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I guess we'll see how that works out, but yeah, possibly. So if we think about it in comparison, so we've been talking a bit about the other private type corporations who might be competing with this.
Yeah.
But it's also going to compete in a way, even though it was never. I think Elon Musk has never come out and talked really about it competing with something like the SLS. I'm pretty sure he has steered away from directly talking or addressing that. I think he's maybe talked about it, but not come out and said it is going to outcompete the SLS in whatever forms.
No, he steered away from it, probably largely because NASA are such important customers for them. And Elon's a big NASA fan anyway. I mean, and obviously the SLS is one of NASA's biggest projects, if not their biggest project in terms of money, anyway, at least.
Certainly a big project. Yeah, I don't know what portion of the budget, but it's an expensive piece of kit. So
it can't be good to be, seeming like you're in direct competition with your biggest or one of your biggest customers.
No.
So he steered away from that. But the implications of, because he was talking in the talk about all the other possible uses of the ITS, getting to places like Europa and stuff like that. And a Europa mission is one of the only SLS missions that are slated for the possible launch in the next few decades. And so the fact that if this thing works and it does, it's fully reusable and the payload to low Earth orbit is way bigger than the SLS can possibly hope to launch. So the payload to any other destination in the solar system is also going to be much bigger.
Yeah, the SLS was 70 to 130 tons to low Earth orbit.
So like maxed out 130 tons, I think, to low Earth orbit, whereas this ITS thing can do, is it 550? 500 or is it, or 550?
550 is what they were estimating. Yeah, and so that you don't there isn't a class of rockets that's heavier than super heavy.
No.
But if there is one, the ITS is the only rocket that really falls in that bracket.
Yeah.
But so you have to then think about. So obviously, the people are starting to now talk about, and I think we've seen a few comments on some of our videos about how this kind of makes the SLS look like a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
And there's been some skepticism for a while in the space community about whether the SLS was ever a good idea to build anyway.
Yeah, is it really a good use of NASA's money when you have companies like SpaceX sort of have huge plans for the future like this? The SLS is kind of using old tech. I mean, a lot of it's sort of based on space shuttle launch systems.
Yeah, the solid rocket boosters on the sides are almost essentially the space shuttle ones, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's mega expensive and obviously completely expendable. There's no reusable part to it at all.
I think it's estimated to cost about 500 million per launch. And that's it's probably going to go up from that. I think the general consensus is.
Yeah. And add to that the fact that there are only a handful of almost like token effort missions planned for it. There's the journey to Mars, which is obviously NASA's like big thing, and the SLS is obviously meant to play a role in that.
Yeah.
And then there's a Europa mission, possibly. I don't know if it's been properly announced or anything yet. The Europa multiple flyby mission. I can't remember what the status of that actually is at the moment. I think it's pretty much confirmed actually.
SLS. There's I'm just looking on the SLS Wikipedia page. So they've got an exploration mission planned. The Europa multiple flyby mission.
Yeah.
That's going to launch by 2022. But there's I think there's 4 things on there. One of them, some sort of asteroid redirect crude thing, that's kind of been mooted.
Yeah.
And one of them is to send an Orion capsule around the moon.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're all cool missions in the absence of anything else happening. But if this is happening, this image on the screen, if SpaceX are doing this, then it does make the SLS seem pretty pointless.
The problem, of course, with the SpaceX ITS, and the problem with NASA relying on a vehicle like that, is there's no real, at the moment, proven commercial market for the ITS. And
No.
so it's not like they can sit around and hope that this thing succeeds when it's extremely high risk and stuff. If they build the SLS, then at least they have a solid program they know will happen, and they can plan missions around it, as opposed to something that is sort of pie in the sky at the moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, at the moment it is essentially just a concept on a drawing board. Apart from the fact that you've got prototype engines, and yeah, they have built stuff. So that's not fair saying it's just a concept. But no. Yeah, I mean, you can't pin all your hopes. You can't say, let's launch our new sort of flagship mission to Europa on this rocket that's sort of just exists in sort of renders and CAD models at the moment.
Yeah, and also is not being designed necessarily with these exploration missions of these types in mind.
Yeah, they're almost like a slightly more long-term use of it. Mars is the first goal.
What is, sorry,
like a Europa mission?
Is there a long-term use of the ITS?
The ITS.
Yeah.
Like a more once we've got the Mars trips routine and nailed down, then we might think about sending something to Europa.
Yeah, my suspicion is though, and I've always thought the SLS, they should have gone and tried to make more use of the commercial market. And again, it was maybe at the time it wasn't so obvious. Made use of the commercial market to launch, on rockets like the Falcon Heavy, say, and spend a quarter of the money that they've had to spend and will spend on developing the SLS to develop things like in orbit refueling stations, all this sort of stuff, which is maybe not a proven concept yet, but go that direction as opposed to building a whole new rocket architecture and accessing the outer parts of the solar system that way. But having said that, they've gone down this route now, and we'll end up with some cool missions out of it. So that's nice. But even with the ITS being designed, for initially a slightly different use case, let's say.
Yeah.
By the time the SLS is flying regularly or semi-regularly, I would not be surprised if it does look like it's just a bit of a waste of money.
Yeah, sure. I mean, some people are the real pessimist, or the real pessimist approach would say the SLS will never fly a mission, at least. But even people say that, okay, maybe they'll fly 3 or 4 and then they'll be retired. And I don't know. I can kind of see that maybe happening. We'll have to just wait and see how much of a real gap there is between.
If they fly 3 or 4 missions, that's a very expensive program.
Yeah.
Because it's cost about 8 billion, I think, up till now, and they haven't obviously. I think it might be projected to cost up to 35 billion to build or something like that, and then it's going to cost 500 to maybe even 500 million at least to launch it every time.
Yeah,
probably costs more.
Yeah, which is crazy considering that. Well, we'll talk about the cost of this thing in a bit, but Elon's his projected cost of something like 10 billion for the development of this. How does that work out being a third the price of the SLS? I'm not really sure how that works.
Yeah, because that's the difference when you have a market-driven system and a government-driven system. You just can't cut costs in the same way. That the system is against you if you build it through a traditional government program, essentially.
Yeah. But yeah, NASA has obviously had and continues to have a really important role in science and exploration. And I can see as more and more commercial interests move into space and there's colonization efforts going on other planets, it will still be really useful to have a body like NASA overseeing, making sure things don't go too mad and making sure that scientific integrity is preserved in certain sites and things like that. And sort of
Yeah, I mean,
doing the pure exploration for exploration's sake. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to build and operate their own launch system. It seems to make a
no, I
lot more
mean,
sense for them to, like maintain and build robotics, and possibly not even do that eventually. There might be companies that do that, but run the missions and do the science essentially.
yeah, absolutely. That's the way that these space agencies are going to go. It makes no sense really, looking forward, for them to be building their own launch systems. But these types of SpaceX, NASA's going to benefit hugely from the privatization of space and the development of reusable rockets and stuff. It will still play a hugely important role in developing, specialist instrumentation to do certain studies, doing all the science associated with these missions. It basically, the commercialization of space isn't a hindrance to NASA. It's a great benefit, because they're going to get cheap flights basically to exotic places to do better science.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, NASA's not, I do think occasionally people mistake this for kind of a changing of the guard, and that private companies are going to totally take over, and NASA's just going to not be
just fade away.
Yeah, and it won't. That's not what will happen. It will just, its role will just change, and it will still be very important, I imagine.
Yeah, totally agree.
But yeah, commercializing rockets and building reuse and having that market competition in that sector is only going to benefit NASA and science, and most of the things that NASA has stood for. They've got rocketry to a place where it could be taken over by private companies, and I know SpaceX had a lot of help in developing their rockets from various agencies, governmental agencies, including NASA, and obviously they're its biggest customer, or were. I don't know if they still are.
Yeah, I think they might be, especially if you consider commercial crew as well as the cargo resupply stuff for the ISS. But I think that there's the American defense stuff is going to be also like a massive lucrative thing for SpaceX if that deal goes through.
Yeah. So generally, I think if we think about the SLS again, we'll see. I'm excited for the SLS because we'll get some cool missions out of it. But
yeah, and it's gonna be a beast to watch that thing launch as well.
Yep, it's a cool big rocket. So yeah. I can't really complain. But it could be, by the time it's kind of on the launch pad flying regularly, it could look like a bit of a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about, which I suppose is related to NASA, is this whole planetary protection thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, Elon did mention something right about it?
Yeah, so it wasn't in his main talk. It was in the press conference afterwards.
Yeah,
and he's
when they asked questions and stuff.
Yeah, it was like a Q press. No, it wasn't in the Q&A from the actual talk.
Okay.
Jesus Christ, that was fucking shambles.
What? Yeah, I was just about to say, what the hell was going on in that? What sort of people do they let ask questions? They should have vetted them.
It's a bit like Comic-Con. I don't know if have you ever watched like a Comic-Con panel. And these properly nutty fans standing up and just being like, I love you. And I always think, do you think that you'd want to come with me on holiday somewhere? I don't know, some stupid shit like that. Didn't they have, someone was like talking about Michael Cera and like, what else was in there? I mean, it made me cringe, man. Yeah. And Elon's face, he just sort of stood there like looking. And, he's famously like a no bullshit kind of guy, like don't waste my time kind of thing. I think at least, in his sort of work and in his companies, that's the way he runs his companies. So you can just imagine him like, no essays, he was saying. No essays, just questions. Yeah,
it was a bizarre set of questions. Some of them were just normal questions.
Yeah, there were some good ones like embedded in there. But yeah, so the planetary protection, he was asked about this in the follow-up press conference, which I think happened basically right after it, right after the talk. And, we talked about this on our Should We Colonize Mars episode. Right. And it's an important thing. We don't think it should stop us going and stop us colonizing, but also we have the potential to answer some like pretty massive questions about life, specifically about life, using Mars as a really, really useful comparison to the Earth. And obviously, if we just go there with thousands and thousands of people and tons of ships and machinery and farms and all that crap, then we might be hindering our chances of making those discoveries. So
it's an interesting question, and actually, what Elon came out and said was basically like, "We're not worrying about it." He said, "We've not really seen any sign of surface life on Mars. There's clearly nothing on the surface of Mars. There may be subterranean bacteria. I suspect they're pretty hardy, and there's not much we could do to take them out, even if we wanted to." So that's what we're really talking about in terms of planetary protection. And then he said, like, the planet we should be considering to protect is Earth, and that's why we need to back up, humanity and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's quite I mean, based on the plans that they've set out for the ITS, right? They can't really take the planetary protection thing in quite a strict way as probably the planetary protection experts would like them to, because the timelines just don't allow it.
Yeah.
But having said that statement is quite it's almost discarding it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, that you read that over, he's basically saying that. I mean, I'm not quite sure they're pretty hardy. That's not. I feel like that's not really relevant. Yeah, they're probably pretty hardy, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about infecting or in any way changing a potential extant biosphere.
Yeah.
Not whether we're going to kill them.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, which makes you wonder if he's kind of missed the point of that in a way.
Yeah,
because we're not. It's not like we're worried about damaging the environment, in a way that people worry about sort of deforestation or environmental damage on Earth. It really is. I mean, I'm sure there is a bit of that in planetary protection, or some people have that kind of outlook with Mars. But really, the real kind of important thing is protecting it scientifically, making sure that we can answer the questions we want to answer before we just turn the whole planet into Earth number 2.
Yes, and it's tricky because it's almost like I think he's right in terms of the surface stuff. I think as long as what you really need to be focusing on is keeping things at the surface and trying to minimize any infiltration of any fluids or anything into the subsurface of Mars.
Yeah,
that's where we're probably going to best answer our question. On the surface, yeah, he's right. I mean, there's no signs of surface life. It's just not a habitable place generally, the surface of Mars, is it? So I'm not particularly worried about that in the contamination sense. But I do think they should think seriously about how they might dispose of liquids or these types of things. Like I think there should be a serious discussion with astrobiology people, with companies like SpaceX who are setting these things up, that what you're doing is great, and we can use the technology you're developing to answer some really interesting scientific questions, and we'll help pay for that reason. But in order for us to do that, and in order for humanity to gain this knowledge, that's really important, we should work together to try and minimize the risk that you could be contaminating the groundwater or whatever in somewhere like Mars. I feel like the risk can be, they shouldn't discard it. You can engineer the risk again, like you can with anything, and try and mitigate it as much as possible.
Yeah, this is what we said during our Mars episode, the colonization episode. I think we came to the conclusion that we want it to happen, and it would be cool. It's a really important thing to happen, the colonization, but it needs to be done with a measured, sort of careful approach for this reason. And
yes.
A body like NASA might be their role in it, as well as doing actual science and things, and paying a bit of money towards it. But basically being like a regulatory body for how best to minimize the impact of the colony before we know the answers to some of these questions. I mean, I'm not saying that forever they're going to have to live really carefully and minimize all their impacts on the planet, because ultimately, once you have like millions or a million or more people on Mars, it's going to be really hard to just police that. How are you going to stop them doing what they want to do? But in the early days, there needs to be a real, I think there needs to be a real effort. And if SpaceX's attitude is kind of what Elon said, then it might be useful to have someone like NASA on board to kind of like hold the reins a bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to handcuff SpaceX and prevent them from trying to achieve these goals. It's more like you just need to try and integrate some of this thinking into the way that they go about solving their problems. and designing the habitats or the ships or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's tricky because I totally want this to happen as quickly as possible, and it's going to be amazing. The whole colonization thing, and as you said, we don't want to handcuff SpaceX at all. Don't want to end up NASA being that kind of like annoying, like, oh, we gotta go and do this stupid planetary protection stuff. You know, it's like, for fuck's sake, it's just a fucking rock. Just don't worry about it. But at the same time, like, this is a massive question: origin of life, how common is life in the universe? We don't know the answers to these questions. How did life begin on the Earth? You know, like, these are huge, huge questions. Some of the biggest scientific questions we've ever asked, and Mars can teach us about it. Even if it is sterile, it can teach us about it. So,
absolutely, yeah. If anyone's interested in a bit more about this, we did a couple of episodes of off-world, off-topic episodes, which are in a playlist on YouTube. You can find on was there life on ancient Mars, and is there life on Mars today? And also, we did that colonization episode as well about Mars. So there's a lot more information in there if anyone wants to hear us blab about that stuff for a few hours.
yeah, we did a lot of blabbing, but so ultimately, I think, in the early days of this, I think naturally there will be some integration of planetary protection concerns. I think they won't be as stringent as they are now. They just can't be. If you send humans there, you've already sort of, shot yourself in the foot in some ways, because people are dirty.
Although, like we said before, there's lots of stuff in the rock record on Mars that wouldn't be impacted by modern day stuff particularly. So you could go back and look at the ancient Mars habitable environments and work those things out. Most of the concern would be for modern extant life.
Yeah, and actually, it's actually more likely that what we would find would be ancient fossils of stuff anyway, or like signatures of some kind. That's probably more likely what we would find, but we just don't know for sure. So that's why we need to have this measured approach in the early days. And it might be that, as time goes on and more scientists end up on Mars, and we learn much more about the planet,
which we can do thanks to something like the ITS.
Yeah, that we feel like then, okay, it's less of a risk now to start doing some slightly more major, I don't know, modifications of whatever we want to do. So
exactly.
That's the thing. It's not going to be, I don't think these guidelines are going to be around forever on Mars. It's just an initial thing.
I think, let's not squander the opportunity to answer or damage our ability to potentially answer some very interesting questions about the planet. I even if they do infect some groundwater on Mars, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. You can still answer that question by visiting other parts of the planet.
And it might well be really easy to separate out what's clearly Martian life from terrestrial life and stuff. That might be really easy. It might be like, oh, holy shit, look, what the hell is this thing? It's got like a genetic code used with like 5 bases or whatever instead of the 4 on Earth, and it doesn't use proteins in the same way, or something really weird.
Of course the opposite is it might be very easy. I suppose you might end up with something that, if there is any extant life on Mars, it might be in very, very low concentrations in very, very sort of nutrient poor waters, and when you get there and you chuck a load of Earth life in there, it's just like, we can't separate out what's going on in here because there's like all this junk DNA and there's all this other stuff that's been, what I mean? Modern environments on Earth are so complicated. It's so hard to even find new types of life on Earth, kind of, because there's so much other stuff going on. To separate out, what's going on. It may make it tricky to answer some questions. That's the concern.
Yeah.
Okay. So so we just talked about, if we think about, I'm trying to ask, like, do you think this will actually happen?
That's the $1 million question. It sounds insane. Yeah. And like, obviously, if Elon had done this talk 10 years ago, it would be very different. But people are, and me included, much more inclined to take him seriously now. And like, look where they have come from. That picture he put up of SpaceX in 2002, was it?
Oh yeah, the old
2003. What they're basically when they first started. And there's like 15 people in an office.
Oh yeah,
Elon dancing with maracas.
Yeah. I remember that.
Amazing. And yeah, and then going from that to, routine flights to the International Space Station for NASA and landing rockets vertically after delivering stuff to orbit on drone ships in the middle of the ocean, all this stuff. It's pretty astounding how far they've come. So don't underestimate what they can then do from now. But two things. Well, three things. Firstly, surely not. Like, look at it. Look at it. Look at that thing. Surely this can't. I can't believe my luck that I'm living in a time when this actually might happen.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there is kind of that. It's not a very intellectual. It's like a gut reaction. It's like, come on.
Yeah,
it's really.
As we've come across quite a few times in talking about stuff, there's that barrier of, okay, so it hasn't happened before, so it's really hard to imagine it happening.
Yes, absolutely. Same things. Yeah, we come across this when we talk about things like AI and
Yeah, so it seems unlikely because we haven't had anything like that happen yet. So it's like outside of our context, and it seems a bit sci-fi and mental. So but that's not a reason in itself to doubt that it can happen, and it will happen. So, but I think the main sort of big barrier to it, which is cost, and that, 10 billion is a lot of money, but looking at what they want to do with that 10 billion is that enough? I don't know. It seems like you need more money than 10 billion to build and fly one of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, SpaceX 10 billion is a number that someone like NASA could fork out for a program, especially of this scale. I mean, they're forking out more for the SLS, and they've nearly spent that much on the SLS already. But for a private company, that's a huge outlay of money.
Yes.
So yeah, as I think I talked about in the reaction video just after the stream had finished, that they are going to have to look at new revenue streams and things to try and get this thing, keep the money coming in essentially. But I agree with what Elon was saying about how they're going to be able to get not just private industry but governments to chip in on this, and you can. It's such an ambitious, such a kind of inspiring thing. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few, multi-billionaires around the world who sort of chip in little bits here and there. And
yeah, I mean, if I was a multi-billionaire, I'd put money into it.
Yeah, on the basis, because there's lots of, there's not many, but there's a few billionaires out there who are willing to outlay money. They've got so much money, it's at a point where they tuck away 100 million and they can live as comfortably as they want, and they don't really care about splashing the rest on various projects like the breakthrough stuff and all this. These types of people. So yeah, I mean, there's a few of those around the world. Maybe they'll chip in, and maybe with the additional revenues that SpaceX is going to have to come up with those donations, and with NASA paying for certain missions to be flown to Mars or whatever with this thing, and whatever other private companies, maybe I don't know, mining companies might chip in for it to be used for some sort of mining prospecting thing. I don't know. That's kind of far off and a bit out there, but these types of ideas, you've got to think big, right, to get them this sort of money. So
yeah, and I think those things you're just talking about, like mining and stuff, I mean, that will come. If you build this transport system, that will come, but that you can't rely on that as a means to get the initial development done.
Yes, yeah, that's what I mean. So it'd be, for a mining company, it would be like a slightly mad risk of capital to put into this, on the hope that some way down the road you get your money back because you've put into something that allows you to go and mine, crap loads of rare earth elements from an asteroid.
But
that's not mining companies are not going to be doing that in droves, not to start with.
You need like an ideologically driven mining company, a bit like the SpaceX of the mining world or something.
Yeah, and that's a startup, isn't it? And startups don't normally have much money.
Yeah, so that's going to be something down the road probably. But governments as well is an interesting one. Like maybe, you can imagine, especially if, so say like, for example, China decided to put in a ton of money into it. Is that going to be something that spurs on the US to then also chip in loads of money, and then Russia will want to chip in loads of money? You might sort of snowball a bit because the governments will think, I don't want this to just be like one country's, one country to have the biggest slice of the pie.
That's an interesting question, but how does it work with funding with SpaceX? Because obviously they are a company, they're not allowed to hire people, right, from who haven't got a green card.
That's right. That was in the Q&A session, actually.
Yes, it was. Yeah. What happens if say Russia's putting in large amounts of money to fund the ITS? Are they allowed to do that? I think they have SpaceX have customers, right, who are from various places around the world.
Yeah, they do. Customers from a lot of places, and you think, say Russia wanted to do it, you'd imagine it would be in return for so many seats or whatever.
Yeah.
Or some role in
some
setting
space,
up the colony.
Yeah.
And in that sense, they are just a customer, basically.
Yeah, I just wonder, as SpaceX is a military contractor essentially. I wonder if there's any conflicts.
Yeah, certainly people who are working on the actual rocket, the hardware and the designs and stuff at the moment all have to be like government, basically either American citizens or have green cards or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I think so. Elon, obviously, some people are saying that the choice to give the announcement at like an international conference in Mexico was a specific choice, a thought out choice, because it makes it look like an international effort. We want this to be. We want everyone in the world to be able to do this, to be able to have a shot at being part of the colony.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's probably what SpaceX want. I'm just wondering if they're going to be hamstrung at all along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll have to see how that pans out. But
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything, any rules against them, transporting Russian citizens, say, to Mars. I just wonder if the US will be that happy about Russia trying to set up a colony there or something and trying to claim parts. I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll be totally fine, and hopefully it's fine, and everyone lives in harmony.
And just hold hands and like sings and stuff, and it's all happy.
Yeah, I should have gone.
It would be really interesting to see, actually, if there are several big governments involved in funding it, because they all want to have a role in setting up a colony on another planet, which you wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Absolutely.
But how that's going to play out, like, is that going to breed loads of conflict, or is it actually going to breed sort of cooperation in a way that we haven't seen so much before?
Yeah, it's slightly different, isn't it? Because obviously, the European Space Agency and NASA have collaborated on various projects to varying degrees of success over the years.
The ISS is a good like microcosm of it, I guess. I mean, that's worked pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely, it worked really well. It's just because SpaceX is a private company, and the situation is different, the context is different, and I hope there's no stumbling blocks there in getting as many people involved, I suppose, as possible, and crucially, just getting the thing off the ground with the money required. I hope none of those funding efforts are hamstrung by any of this.
But I agree. Because you can imagine if you take that 10 billion, I'm assuming it is 10 billion. It could well be like 50 or more. But take that 10 billion and divide it between the US, Russia, China, maybe the European Space Agency, maybe Japan. Like that 10 billion, and then a few like philanthropic billionaires. Suddenly that 10 billion is gone. Like, that's cheap as chips. So I mean, it's all to do with how seriously people take it, and governments especially. I think that the billionaires that might want to put their own money into it probably don't need much more convincing. If that's what they want to put their money in to, that's what they want to do. But governments are a different story, obviously. And then obviously SpaceX has been talking about other things to generate revenue, like putting up a fleet of satellites to deliver internet all over the world and stuff. I mean, who knows?
What's happened to that?
Who knows? They've been very quiet about that, so no one really knows what's going on.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but that obviously would generate money, and it was something that would be really useful to have something like that around Mars as well. So, if they get on the ball with that, it just seems like they've got a lot of things going on, though.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't even launched the fact. Well, this is the thing. I mean, you're listing your different things of why it might not have. It's like, surely not. But the cost, and then also, of course, I don't know if this is your third one, but the fact that they haven't actually got the Falcon 9 up yet. Sorry, the Falcon Heavy up.
Yeah, no, that wasn't my third one, but that's a really good point. That keeps being
Or just
pushed
in
back.
terms of, I mean, that's a timeline thing. Presumably, they inevitably will.
Yeah, so the timeline that Musk's put forward in his talk is clearly just not going to happen. Like starting the colonization of Mars like 15 years from now or something.
I forget exactly when that started. It was 10 years for the first launch, I think, wasn't it? First launch to Mars.
Yeah,
Is that right?
I think it might have been less than that actually. I think
Really?
it might. I got the year 2024 or 2025 in my head, but I could be wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, so the timeline's clearly going to slip, and
Yes, I imagine
has, like all of their timelines are slip. You know, it's Elon time, as people say. So it's not real time.
Yeah. And not to say that what they have done in the time period they've said has not been hugely impressive, more that you should maybe just stop talking about timelines.
Yeah.
But people want to know these things, that's the first question. When is this going to happen?
Yeah. And I know, obviously their outlook and the right outlook to have is to get this done as soon as possible, because now we have the ability, or we're about to have the ability to be able to do it. So it makes no sense to wait around. We just get on with it as soon as possible, basically.
Yeah.
So that makes sense in that sense. But so here's the timeline.
Oh yeah, nice work.
So orbital testing starting in 2020. That's like 3 years away.
Wait, ship testing?
Ship testing in 2 years. Booster testing in 3 years. And orbital test. So you're going to be. I mean, if this is right, you're going to be watching this giant ITS rocket launching in like 4 years' time, or less than that.
Jeez.
So that's clearly not going to happen. I mean, they've got these Red Dragon missions to fly as well at the same time. That may well slip back as well. I mean, who knows? We're just going to have to see how it pans out. And as you say, we're talking about this in the context of them not even knowing what happened with the last Falcon 9 launch. So they're grounded totally at the moment. So, although even with this anomaly and this pause in their launch cadence, this is still the most launches they've ever done in a year, I think.
Is that true?
Yeah, but they still need to get that way up. Way up.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So those Mars flights, then, the 10-year time frame must be maybe to send the first people or something like that.
Yeah. Is there any more to this? No, that's it, really.
There's not any more detail in the Mars flights thing, is there?
No.
Presumably, the first stuff to Mars will be unmanned, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. They'll have to make sure everything works and then send up a bunch of habitat stuff, like we were saying earlier.
Will they though? I mean, the Apollo missions launched without sending an unmanned thing to the moon to land.
That's true. Surely they'll have to demonstrate at least the propulsive landing capabilities on Mars before. But that's what the Red Dragon's going to do.
Yeah, with a different vehicle, but yeah.
But I mean, the principle's the same, I guess. It's just a scaling thing, isn't it?
I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that's going to be super cool if that Red Dragon thing pulls. They pull that off. That is going to be one of the biggest things that's ever happened in commercial space. The biggest thing that's ever happened in commercial space.
Oh yes, yeah, it'll be a huge deal. Yeah, I mean those missions are going to be. God, look at all those things that are going to be happening over the next few years.
Crazy, isn't it? Crazy.
So 2020. I mean, the big stuff really starting, say, 2018, with the Red Dragon missions and the ship testing.
I can't wait to see.
Yeah. 2019, we'll see booster testing, orbital testing in 2020, and then Mars flights by 2023.
I hope that happens, but I wouldn't be surprised if you add a good 5 years into all of that. Just
yeah,
stretch it out a bit. But even if you add 5 years in, we're still looking at before 2030. We're going to have these things flying to Mars.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Crazy. Okay, right. I think we've probably covered most of what we want to talk about there. Can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
I reckon we have. Yeah.
I don't know how long this has gone on for.
I have no idea.
I think I mentioned in the reaction video that it would probably last sort of 2 hours, might even be 2 shows. It's not going to be 2 shows because we've just splurged it in one. I don't know if this is over 2 hours. Sorry if that promise wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah, well, we'll probably talk about it again, like throughout the years coming, because there's going to be more details coming.
Oh yeah, constant. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna. if people have questions or anything they want us to talk about, feel free to drop them in the comments. And when we have the shows back up and running more regularly, we'll discuss those comments, answer any questions. So I imagine that, there's going to be bucket loads more stuff on this. But this is our kind of show after the reveal, I suppose.
Yeah. It's a kind of slightly delayed reaction video, I guess. Reaction discussion video. But good fun to talk about.
Yes. Okay, right. I think that will do for now. So,
so as we said at the beginning,
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And as we said at the beginning, it will be, again, we're both going to be away a little bit over the next couple of months. So there won't be too many shows coming out, but there are some bits and pieces coming out, including this. So the channel's still active. Keep the comments coming. Keep the discussion coming. And spread the word. Get people to subscribe. That'd be great. We just want to build the community. And we'll see you guys again in probably a couple of months, maybe a bit less.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
See you later.
See you later, guys.